right, welcome.
You're.
Yes,
Hey,
sir. You tune in to another episode of Vulcan Soapbox. I am Enos Shin. Today, just to give you a brief on this show, this is the Vulcan Soapbox. I'm glad y'all able to join us. This is the hottest show on the planet right now, unless you've been living underneath a rock. Vulcan Soapbox, aka the safe space. What do I mean by safe space, y'all? It's a place where new ideas are definitely welcome. So bring in all those ideas you have that you kept in private or secret that you was afraid to speak about openly in public. This is the space you can come in and express those thoughts. You get what I'm saying? Again, my name is Enos. We got some new guests, recurring guests, and I'm like for y'all to go ahead and introduce yourselves, man. Starting off with King.
yo, what up? King David Wilson at Champ Wilson on everything. Came here just to talk, you know what I'm saying? Kick it with y'all, uh, break break down some mental walls, and uh, and have a good time doing it.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir.
To himself, man. Mr. I Coach Perspective, Mr. I don't have my shirt on, Mr. Six Pack, Mr. Body like ooh wee. Yeah, man. I'm just here, man. One of the wisest men alive that knows he knows nothing, man. You know.
Coach, Fresh, what you got?
Listen, man, you already know who I am. Freshly sniped. I'm just here to get my shots up, man. Looking forward to going through and looking at everything with a fine tooth comb of logic, perspective, and reasonable thought.
Hmm.
How's everybody going? I'm the Vulcan, aka Logos. We're here to get into a video talking about the God Fraud. I posted the things we're going to be covering: astrology, organized religion, blind faith, Jesus, Satan, church, pimping in the church, Bible, questioning your beliefs. We're going to get into it, y'all. We don't mind whether you agree or disagree. This is not about who's right or who's wrong on this. This is about thinking about this thing thoroughly, making sure that you understand exactly how to discern the truth from the lie, the good argument from the bad argument, the sophistry versus the sound reasoning. And we're ready to get into it, y'all. Let's go.
Ongoing discussion and conversation that we've had over a series of different episodes dating back almost 8 years ago. I believe we should have the difficult discussion all the time, without judgment, without condescension, and, with the implementation of objectivity. We have to be objective, when having these types of conversations. It's important. This show is about religion. Everybody is afraid to have this conversation and discussion because we've been programmed in such a way to just be followers and not researchers, to just be followers and accepting and believers without being inquisitive. I think we have to be inquisitive if we really want to have an in-depth relationship with what we call God. Today's show is going to be powerful. It's going to be insightful. And it's not designed to offend or disrespect anyone's belief. It is designed to get you to think, to challenge everything you thought was true. If we don't do that today, we failed at our mission. I respect religion, but at the same time, I understand that there's a broader understanding, and it can be had if we endeavor to go deeper. On the next So What Morning Show, we'll be talking about the God Fraud Show. Bible flaws versus flawless Bible. We got to have this discussion. I encourage you to tune in to tradiov.com, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And let's have this discussion. And after it's over, let's continue to have this discussion. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you shortly. So what? Out.
Yeah, so what I was saying when these guys were saying things like program, We think about a program, we're thinking about, a coder who's putting information into a computer, and that computer has no will of its own. It just acts based off how it's been programmed. So my issue with that is that that's not human nature. That's not how humans are. We're influenced by our parents, our surroundings, our friends, our enemies, the TV, radio, everything that you can imagine. We're programmed. We are given information, but the thing is that it still goes through a filter. So when we're using that programming word, it's a little disingenuous to our real life scenario. I'm not saying we don't get beguiled. We don't have take on influences that aren't good for us. I'm not saying we have the best filters. That's part of the purpose of this show, is to help us to have more defined filters that are stronger and more potent to fight against, erroneous thinking and erroneous philosophies. But, to say that we're being programmed is to take the ownership of us being able to be held accountable for what we believe and don't believe out of our hands. So I really want people to understand these words have meaning.
Back to the questions. This is an honest question, right? Is it the preacher's job to keep the congregation in a state of dependency and self-pity? I'm a hustler, baby. I'm just asking. No disrespect. We don't want to disrespect anybody. We want people to think deeply here today. How can black men and women truly reach their full potential in this life when most of us are still participants in a Ponzi scheme that involves the use of a staunchly rigid hierarchy? Different ones, whether it's social programming like religion, education, and employment. How can we ever, right, reach our full potential when there is an authority and a hierarchy in every aspect of life that tells us what's right for us, right? I'm just asking. How is it even possible? It's all, and if we look at all of those institutions, they're fortified by God. Our relationships are fortified by God. Men have the egoic stance that I'm the leader because God said so. And none of us ever question, right? None of us, listen, if you're a follower of a belief system and you're not a theologian, you're not really a follower, right? The followers know what they're following. I need to know what the shepherd looked like. You can't be a sheep and blind.
So, yeah, I'll go ahead and go. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to point out the fact that he neglected to mention centuries and centuries of biological programming, if you will, or biology, how our bodies are built, how our internal systems, our minds work, all those things. None of those things are programmed by religion. Those things have been true since the beginning of time, since the beginning of the ages. So the man is the leader because he's designed that way. And that's not even me getting into, the designer or the creator or whatever it is that you want to call him, but you can't put those things out there, those premises out there, as if they were introduced into society by religion. They may have been defined by religion, but if we're being honest, at some point in time, they were probably defined by science first.
Yeah.
Anybody else got some thoughts on that? Y'all think society defines the hierarchical relationship between men and women?
I think that a lot of society has been based off religious viewpoints. You know, I can't say all societies subscribe to the same viewpoint, but globally, in most societies, there is a hierarchy, and it is a patriarchy. Um,
So let me close this real quick. What does this say that almost all religions that are old enough to count in this conversation have it the same, regardless of where they were originated from, what region of the globe that they originated from? They almost all have it the same. What's your opinion on that? On why it's like that?
It's a good question. Man, some of that is for me. I can only give some reasoning, though I may not be able to prove because of my non-existence at that time. But in some ways, you can think strength. Um,
Sorry, I just
you,
want to say this point real quick for the audience because I see people tuning in and watching. We're having technical difficulties we're working on right now. So again, I want to apologize for the technical difficulties.
This is an honest question, right? Is it the preacher's job to keep the congregation in a state of dependency and self-pity?
First part, no to the second part. Is it a preacher's job to keep the people dependent? I would change the wording. It's not the preacher's job to keep the person dependent. It's the preacher's job to remind the audience of their dependence, because that is the real state of humanity. We're dependent on a lot of things. We're dependent on food and water. We're dependent upon, existentially dependent upon our Creator. So I would say it's the preacher's job to remind the audience of that and to instill the significance of that. The second part of what he mentions as far as self-pity, the Bible talks about like a worldly sorrow versus a godly sorrow. And I don't know where the Bible asks us to pity ourselves. That's not a part of Christian doctrine. So I'm not saying that people that might not struggle with that within the context of the church, but I'm not familiar anywhere where it talks about somebody having a pity for themselves.
Well, he's clearly not pulling from doctrine. He's clearly pulling from poor personal experiences, I suppose, or purposely selected experiences. Obviously, he's trying to make a point, but
right.
I've never pitied myself. To be honest with you, I pity myself outside of the will of the Lord, and that's not to get too much into that, but it is the preacher's job. He's the conduit. That's the way, the religion, if you will. It's the way the faith is designed.
Yeah.
So,
if somebody has any other perspective, we can move on with the video.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that before I already see where Buddy going, and a lot of times, I can create this same argument from a side of somebody who's actually practicing versus calling out the fake. And so you can look at any belief system and you can call out some fake people, but that doesn't alleviate the real. So it's a good question to pose, but who are you talking about? Are you talking about what a preacher actually is supposed to do, which is to preach, or are you talking about what certain preachers do, which is mislead? And so you're not gonna shed no new light when it's already been said that there are wolves in sheep clothing. That's not a new discussion. You actually are backing up maybe a point that you are trying to talk against.
yeah, he's definitely highlighting one of the major flaws of society. If we're being 100% honest, this type of ideology where you color the entirety of any given entity based on the worst of its entity. It's the source of a good amount of the problems that we have in society overall, right? Racism, prejudice, all those things are based off of this premise where you take the worst of whatever entity that you're trying to destroy or trying to color in a bad light, and you say, look at what they all do. It's not a logical argument. It's based off of a very small sample size.
Yeah, well, in his defense, at this point, he's only really asked the question, so I don't know if he's made an argument, but I just want to read a few of the comments we have right here. and then we'll get back to the video unless you have anything more pressing on that topic. Zoe said he about to hoop after the finish, V-neck on V-neck, V-neck on neck. Y'all are intelligent young black men. Y'all dictate the subject matter and build off the discussion. I think that's saying, like, if the video's messing up, y'all, we can just do that and build a bit. And then now it's Ernest Banks, and then we got Rokisha saying, my question is, what is he, the preacher, actually keeping them dependent on?
Good question, right?
So I'll cover that real quick.
Video.
Dependent upon God. That's the he's created the universe, so depend upon the God at the end of the day. But so let's go. We good.
Which preacher is he talking about?
To be honest with you, for this argument to work, for it to be valid.
No disrespect. We don't want to disrespect anybody. We want people to think deeply here today. How can black men and women truly reach their full potential in this life when most of us are still participants in a Ponzi scheme that involves the use of a staunchly rigid hierarchy? Different ones, whether it's social programming like religion, education, and employment, right? Reach our full potential when there is an authority and a hierarchy in every aspect of life that tells us what's right for us.
And this is, we have to deconstruct what he's saying a little bit here. The reality is this right here. Everything is based off a hierarchy from how, whenever you have different types of sand inside of water, it's called hydrological sorting. The sand and stuff and the different rocks in the water is going to sort based off its density, based off its size and weight, and you're gonna have the stratification that occurs in the ocean, right? When our minds think about concepts and ideas, like right now, I'm formulating ideas and they're coming out in the sound of sound waves that y'all are organizing y'all's brains, right? That's all a hierarchy. Your mind has to pick and choose what's significant at what moment in time, so they can stack it back up so it can be intelligible to the individual, right? That's how everything works. Everything works in the form of a structure. Your mind can only have one thought at one time. Nobody's multitasking thoughts, even though you might think that way. Have you ever seen, different studies on how the brain works? It focuses on one thing at one time. So we're always putting a focus on what we deem to be most important. Our brain does it naturally, and then we do it every single day. Everything that's important in life is structured off a hierarchy, whether it's banking, the government, the military, churches, inside the home, your own biological system inside of your body. If you get really, really cold, your body's going to start denying blood to the extremities, right? So it can focus on your most important organs. There's a hierarchy of which organs are most important in your body. So my point is saying what he's saying right here, when he's talking about some kind of disdain for hierarchies that he's alluding to right here, is very dangerous, because everything that's important to us, from our body to the universe itself, is structured based off hierarchies. There's things of lesser importance, things of more importance. So I want to take that negative stigma that he's given to hierarchies, and we look at hierarchies as just a neutral thing that can help, that can hurt. But it's integral to us being able to have any type of existence on this planet, or to think any type of thought. So yeah, we keep it going unless anybody wanted to tackle that. So I guess we can keep it going. Perspective, feel free to jump in there.
Yeah. I'm just listening to y'all. Y'all kind of hit. I don't want to repeat kind of what y'all are saying. We're all kind of saying the same thing.
Facts.
I concur.
Okay, so I got the word to keep it going. So yeah, on that note, anybody else remember? He says keep it going for 5 more minutes. So I guess we have some kind of difficulty with the video playing right now. But I want to let the audience know, whenever they're hearing people speak in this kind of way, it's important to question things, as he mentioned at the outset of the video. But the reality is this right here: there's a tool to questioning things. Questioning things, being skeptical, is not the wild, wild west where anything goes. There are rules. There's a rubric in place. What is the proper way to be able to be skeptical, to be able to question things, to discern things?
A hierarchy, if you will.
A hierarchy, if you will. Some things are more important than others when it comes to being critical in your thoughts, right? So it's like we have soft science and we have hard sciences. If I have a hard science that's going to help me get to this truth, I'm going to trust that more than I'm going to trust the soft science. That may get me close to the truth, but it may not get me all the way there. Right?
Why do we trust the science more though?
So let's just give a quick example while waiting on the video. Let's say that I believe somebody robbed the store, right?
Right.
And I don't know there's video, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask people that were in the store. I'm gonna get a corroboration of different information, right? And they're not all gonna agree on every single detail, but the core information may be pretty much the same. And I'm able to pull from all the different testimonials to get a pretty accurate picture of what happened, more or less, right? But that's a soft science. That's me using sociology, right, and psychology to get an answer. Those are the soft sciences. Even some history, right? Using history, psychology, sociology. But what if we find out we got a video on it?
Hard science.
That's a hard science, right?
What you can see, what you can quantify. Things that are measurable.
Absolutely right. So that's the difference between a soft science and a hard science. And so when you're listening to people speak about these different things, y'all, some of this stuff's going to be very objective. And you can manage it. You can measure these things. Some of these things are going to be like, you know what? I can glean some things from it, but may not be as the full picture that I would love to have. But we're able to make a certain judgments, some educated guesses. So when you listen to people like this speak, filter in your mind what part of what he's saying is things that I can really decipher for myself definitively, and what things I'm never going to have the full scope. If I don't have that full picture. So I just want you to hear that when you're hearing people like this speak.
Also, beware of people who are spouting several different ideas and concepts that they either have trouble or just neglecting to bridge together to make a coherent and complete thought.
Yeah.
Often people just attack different aspects of certain things that they don't like, and they never string them together to form a coherent thought or argument when it comes to them. So be careful when you see these types of people who what I'm going to call rant, that may not be what Bill Williams is doing, but oftentimes it turns into a rant where people are just espousing their opinions on certain things, and that's where you're able to decipher and break off what makes sense to you and things that don't make sense, and then things that don't make sense. One of this platform is say question those things using the tools that you have available to you, logic, reasoning. Does it make sense?
True.
Yes, sir.
And if we look at all of those institutions, they're fortified by God. Our relationships are fortified by God. Men have the egoic stance that I'm the leader because God said so. And none of us ever question. Right? None of us. Listen, if you're a follower of a belief system and you're not a theologian, you're not really a follower. Right? The followers know what they're following. I need to know what the shepherd looked like. You can't be a sheep and blind.
We'll be here all day if I address everything he's saying, but I want to pick the biggest thing. This elitist mentality that a lot of guys like this have, where he says you got to be a theologian to really be able to follow something. What percentage of the population throughout human history has been the aristocratic group of people that are learned, that can read the Latin or read the different languages that are available, that were even literate to begin with?
I'll say about 10% of each religion.
That's max. But religion, like we look at our slave ancestors, those of us who have ancestors that were slaves, their religion got them through a lot of hard times. And a lot of them weren't even literate. How could he be a theologian? Is spirituality for those who think they have it all and are the most intellectual and articulate, that are lavish with a posh lifestyle, that forget about God, or is religion or spirituality for those who need hope and who have to grasp on the things that are outside of their reality because their reality is bleak? Why should I wake up in the morning? These are the questions that spirituality answers. And so when you have guys with this elite mentality of, you got to be a theologian.
Okay.
That's a very small percentage of the population.
Right.
So he's offering a solution to the audience, to your grandma, to the people in your life, people that are jumping, over borders to get to Texas from Mexico and to get to California and stuff like that. People that may not even be able to have the language when they go to a new land and stuff like that. Basically, spirituality is not for you because you can't read it in the language.
Because you're not a theologian.
Because they're not a theologian.
I think it's good to
Sorry, real quick.
understand.
Sorry, real quick. I want to say
Oh,
this last little point right here. Make this last connection. He's going to talk about the Roman Catholic Church at different points in time. This is exactly what the Roman Catholic Church did. When they wouldn't allow people to be able to read the Bible, and they kept the Bible in a certain language that the populace couldn't understand, so that only they could be the arbiters of truth and interpret it for them. So this guy's not offering us freedom. He's offering us a bondage that we've seen before. Sorry, sorry, King. Go ahead.
no, I agree with you. I think that it's important. I think one thing that he is saying that is important, that he's hinting towards, is that it's important to have not understanding. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and some people follow blindly with no understanding, and then they end up living solely like they haven't studied to show themselves approved. So they're just regurgitating things that they heard that may not even be what something actually was meant to be. So I think it's important to not only gain a concept but then go find understanding for that concept. It's like in the word it says my people perish because of lack of knowledge. Some people who have the ability to get the knowledge in this, especially in this age, because it's so levels to this conversation, like you were saying, like back in the day, this was happening before Roman Catholic Church. You have Pharisees and Sadducees who they know how to read, but these other cats don't know how to read. Them they looking at Yahshua like, how you know all this stuff? Regular people don't know this stuff because they don't have access. How you got this inside of you? So um I think it's definitely levels to people should have an understanding, but then at the same time, if you're looking at his comment and putting it against all of time, this is not true, because it's impossible for somebody to be a theologian when they can't read. So your statement is based on a point, maybe a point of time now that people have access to things. Now people can get knowledge, but that statement don't stand the test of all time.
Great point. Most early Christians were slaves and merchants. It was illegal to be a Christian. So a lot of them were illiterate. A lot of them definitely weren't theologians. And so then he talks about being a follower. How can you follow something? How does he say it? How can you follow something if you're not a theologian? Followers aren't.
The
Whatever.
theologian have to know what they're you have to know what you're following. So basically, I thought he was saying, like, if you're not a theologian, you don't know what you're following. He was speaking real dogmatic about that.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that point up. That helped on my memory, because the thing is that this is where it gets into this all or nothing kind of mentality. People understand things at different levels, and that's how it'll be for life. Not everybody's gonna understand things to the same extent, and you don't need to understand all things to benefit from it. Some people are going to be more inquisitive, want to know more. Some people are going to want to be inquisitive, learn less. We learn about electricity in school. Before I learned about electricity in school, my kids were still able to plug stuff into the wall for their iPads. You know what I'm saying? Before they learned about electricity in school.
Nice.
So you can still get the benefit of it. Now,
right.
I understand electricity, but I don't understand electricity like an electrician does. You know what I'm saying?
That doesn't mean you can use it.
And an electrician doesn't understand it. Electrician doesn't understand it like an electrical engineer understands it. You see what I'm saying? And we can get progressively more detailed into the electrical understanding until that person will look at even electrician and go, "I don't know nothing about it."
Now, he's also, and in this argument, it oftentimes is done where you conflate religion and faith. In these conversations, it has to be pointed out that in faith is, as the Bible defines it, essentially believing in something without having proof of it. So what Zoe Williams is, the premise he's building upon, that you can't believe in something or you can't follow something unless you know everything about it, literally flies in the face of what the faith is built upon. That's for any religion, right? There is, as far as I know, there's no religion, there's no faith-based religion where anyone living has seen the deities that they worship. in the physical flesh. So there are aspects of his conversation that I don't understand how he's applying them to faith-based religion or that are built off of relationship, that are built off of belief, because technically outside of faith, there is no proof that any of these things are true. But it's the same with, I mean, air.
Yeah,
Breathable.
I definitely want to speak to that faith part, but I know he's going to cover that more in the video, so I won't do it now. I want to read the comment, then Enos, I know you're ready to get back to the video, so I'm going to read this comment real quick, and then we'll get back to the video. The followers don't know who they are following. If they did, they would be highly unlikely to continue to follow. Even the holy text they base their fellowship on says folks will not know. Lacking eyes to see and ears to hear. Understanding comes by personal relationship, according to their holy text. Knowledge is not understanding. The true access, according to the text, only comes again via personal relationship.
Very nice, Rokisha. She said it. She said what I said much more eloquently.
All right, let's rock.
I have to ask these questions. Who asked the humbling question of what if I'm wrong more often? The religious person, whether it be Christianity, Judaism, Islam, the scientist, or the atheist? Who asked that question more? What if I'm wrong? We rarely see the self-righteous religious person say, what if I'm wrong? Right? Because in being in alignment with a belief system that tells you you're doing right, right? And others are doing wrong because they don't believe the way you believe, puts you in a judgmental kind of mindset. So when do you ever get to the point and go, I could be wrong?
So I'm having a hard time understanding like his points and saying like he's making blanket statements. Like if you believe something, you're not gonna say I could be wrong. That's like I forget what it's called, but it's kind of like he's asking something that no one's doing, because you wouldn't say what if I'm wrong and say I believe something at the same time. You can't do that. You can't. I mean, to my understanding, you can't say I believe in God and say, well, what if I'm wrong? You know what I mean? And what if he didn't exist? You know what I mean? That means my initial statement can't be true. I don't really believe that. What do you think about that? What do you?
To me, if he's talking about, so he identified who he's talking about now. He said he's talking about a self-righteous religious person. I'm against self-righteous religious people. So this is what I'm saying about this argument he's creating. It's not completely wrong, because some of the things he's pointing out are wrong are the same things that the Messiah pointed out was wrong with religion. So you pretty much regurgitating
Scripture.
scripture. You are proving the scripture by what you're trying to disprove, and so you're doing a service to the kingdom by some of these things you're saying. Like self-righteous is and I see our comments that self-righteous is not equal to religious, and those are two whole separate words. But what I say about the person he's describing is self-righteous, and then we could say common religious. And when I hear religious, I think about a person who follows traditions, right? And I'm not in agreement with all traditions that people celebrate. So we just passed the season of December, which comes with Christmas. You could go in some churches and they got trees up, and they talking about, all kind of, or when it's Resurrection Sunday, yeah, it's in line with the Passover, but I don't know where these bunnies and stuff come from. We know where it come from, but not to go on a tangent. What I'm saying is these practices that people got, they don't know why they doing this practice. So now this to me is the religious portion that you need to question. Why am I practicing these traditions in my religion? So, but I think it's important that we understand now he's identified who he's talking about, which is a self-righteous religious person, which
Okay.
in my mind, Christ was like, this is a Pharisee. He's talking about the Pharisees, and I ain't got no problem dissing the bad Pharisees, right?
Yeah. He knows.
Right? And others are doing wrong because they don't believe the way you believe, puts you in a judgmental kind of mindset. So when do you ever get to the point and go, I could be wrong? Who asked that humbling question more? I don't know. I could be wrong.
I will see you in hell.
When was the last time you seen your pastor say that? I could be wrong. I'm just saying. When was the last time you seen your imam, right? Your imam for Islam, right? Or your kohen for Judaism. When's the last time you seen him? I could be wrong. I don't really know what this book is saying. I'm using the best of my ability, discernment, my feeling for it, whatever. Would he lose his flock if he said that? 855-878-4652. 855-878-4652. Again, I'm taking phone calls too.
I want to give a shout out to Perspective, because when he first came on, he was like, I'm a man who, you know, if he can say it better than I said it, but
one of the wisest men who knows he knows nothing.
Knows nothing. So I know a man right here who says, hey, I don't know nothing, with an attempt to gain more.
Facts.
Yeah, and to speak to what he's saying right there, who says it more? I mean, obviously, there's no way to quantify who says what more, you know. And I guess I'll define a little bit of the terms we've been using with faith. You know, faith is kind of an archaic word. We use it because it's obviously in the Bible. But you know, the word we would use more commonly in everyday language that means faith for us as Westerns, you know, I mean English speakers, I'll say, is the word confidence. Confidence is the Latin that means con means with, and fidence, faith means faith. Fide, faith. You know, so when somebody says I'm confident in something, right, or you lack confidence, or saying you lack faith, if they say you're a very confident person, you have a lot of faith. It's saying the same word. It's just, you know, faith is more of a word that we don't really use in our language outside of religious circles anymore, because it doesn't really fit in the timeline. But it's the same word, confidence, and that's a very common thing. Now to point this out, to say you're confident is to say you don't really know. That's what that's saying. Know is, for something to be classified as knowledge, requires three things. It requires justified true belief. Justified means you can show it. Like, so when you were in math class and teacher said, show your work, she's saying show your work because you have to be able to demonstrate you know how to get to that number. You didn't just copy off somebody's paper. You know, you got to be able to demonstrate you actually using some kind of formula to get there, because that means you know how to do math. So knowledge to justify means it has to be something that you can actually show you know. You know, if you guessed it, then that's not knowledge. That's a guess. You know, true meaning it can't be true. You can't know something that's not actually true. Like, I can't know that Barack Obama was the first president, because that's not true. I can think that. I can even believe that. But I can't know that because it's not factually accurate. It doesn't correspond to reality. And the last one is belief. Belief just means it's in your head. Knowledge doesn't have extension in space, right? You can't put it in a glass. You can't smell it, right? It's not a physical thing. So belief just means something that's inside of your head. It's not something that, so for you to know something has to be justified true belief. We say, so when somebody says they believe something, they have confidence in something, they have faith in something, they are admitting that they don't actually know it, which means they are in fact saying that they could be wrong. They don't know it for sure, but they have a lot of confidence. And like when you get married to somebody, you have confidence this person's going to be a good person for you. You take a job, you have confidence it's going to be a good job for you. You don't actually know. It could turn out a different way. So just everybody understands the terminology that we're using so they can help us in the conversations and move forward. So I'm talking too fast, audience. I apologize for that, but feel free to leave any kind of questions or comments. We're going to keep going with the show.
A question
Yeah,
that also removes the consideration of the personal relationship that's built between the deity and the pastor or the imam. So they're less likely to say that they don't know something. Like if my mom leaves a note at the house, right, telling me to clean up, even if she just leaves a note that means clean up, even if there's no context in the note, because I've spent time, because I have a relationship with my mother, I know the things that she likes, what she prefers, because we've had conversations. We spent time. I have time under my belt with this person. We have a relationship. I can add that context. I can understand what that means, because despite what the text says, or despite if the text doesn't have you don't understand it, I do understand it, because I have a relationship with that person. And I know we're dealing with logic and reasoning, but anytime he asks a question like that, it's weird to me, because even though religion is religion, it's based off of, for the most part, a relationship with the deity that you're worshiping. So you're going
at least in like primarily the Abrahamic ones.
Correct. So when you're talking about your pastor or your imam saying, saying, what if I'm wrong? The premise would be, the idea would be that I'm not wrong because my father told me, or my God or my Lord, my Savior told me. This is how he explained it to me. Obviously, we're not talking about the charlatans, right? Who are playing around with it. We're talking about the legitimate, prophets and pastors and imams and however you want to describe them. But none of this stuff is based off of, if you're doing it right, your own understanding.
Yeah, what I'll say in short is just that obviously different points that you would make are going to have different levels of certainty. Like if I said Paul walked to Damascus, or I said that God created the universe, or I said that, these things I may believe to varying degrees, or I may say, like, I think that Abraham's first wife was named this, because I can't really recollect what his first wife's name was. You know what I'm saying? So I may say these things, but I may vary on how resolute I am in those particular statements. So I want to define faith according to the scriptures. Talks about faith is the substance of what's hoped for and the evidence of what's unseen. The evidence of what's unseen, just like gravity. We don't see gravity. We have evidence of gravity. We don't see air. We have evidence of air. There's some things that we can't definitively, empirically say that we know for a fact is what we believe it to be, but we have a lot of evidence to support it. That's what we call it, faith, or we call it confidence, or we haven't called it confidence.
Yeah, confidence. That's a better way to understand it. The confidence. There's levels to confidence. So, yeah. So I want to address what was said earlier before we went back to the video. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a healthy skeptic of your faith, right? So, if you think about the definition of being a skeptic, is to observe and make sense of what you are observing. So I don't think there's anything wrong. Now, when he said I could be wrong, I wouldn't frame it that way, but I think you should investigate. You see that with what's the group in the book of Acts, the Bereans. When Paul came and told them who Christ was, they were skeptical and went behind and actually researched and did some information. And that's what I think the Bible actually commands you to do that. So, yeah. So being a skeptic of your faith or your religion, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Test every spirit to see if the spirit is of truth or of error.
Yeah. Yes. So it is the science to it. So, anything else before we get back to it?
Let's get back to it.
All right.
He a good preacher.
You guys got religious questions, you can call in and ask us. We're going to try to do our best, right? Got you. We got one of our special guests is online right now. The Pope and selling indulgences. You got the Pope on the line? No. There we go. Welcome back. Welcome back, Jeff. I'm just saying, is it possible to sell forgiveness and pardons? And if our religious beliefs are based on hierarchies, then it would make sense that every other aspect of our lives are based on hierarchies too. I got to go to the pastor because he's the intercessor to God, right? Your corporations are set up in a hierarchy too. The CEO sits at the top. He's the God of the corporation. Yeah? Every aspect of our lives is based on a hierarchy. Who set that up? We got to get into this today. Oh my God.
Pause that. And
Yeah.
again, I'm gonna be brief with this right here, but when he says your corporations, it's really spooky when he says it that way, right? Your corporations are built off a hierarchy. Yours, what do you mean? You live here too. You're in that building right there, which is based off a hierarchy. The foundation being very important to the building, and some of the non-structure supporting walls are less important than the structure supporting walls, right? That's how it works when it comes to construction. So my point is just saying, like, again, the spookiness of your corporations, what does that even mean? And then we talked about hierarchies. Who set that up? You have to go back to God setting it up, because, again, every single thing in existence operates off of hierarchies, electrons, protons, atoms, molecules. Everything you're going to think of has a certain way that it works. And so when he talks about it this way, it sounds more sinister than it really is. Hierarchies are necessary. If you go out into the middle of the ocean, like in the Titanic, and you're freezing to death, and your body doesn't cut off the blood from going to your fingers and your feet so that it can stay going to your heart and your brain or wherever it goes, then you're going to die a lot faster than somebody who has their body going, you know what? The heart's more important than the toes.
Next.
So
Yeah.
just keep in mind, hierarchies are necessary.
It's the foundation of in order to have hierarchy, you got to have a foundation. So the question, where is this coming from? How do you get to the top without having a foundation? So, yeah, so that it's necessary to have the foundation, understand what the foundation is, to build upon that.
And what is
if you question hierarchies, where is the hierarchy? Then what do you replace the hierarchy with?
Yeah. The studies have already been done. Whenever you put, especially boys, in a room, they're going to naturally sort themselves into hierarchies. Who's the smartest? Who's the fastest? Who's the strongest? Who's the most dominant? Who's the more passive? They're going to naturally start doing that amongst each other.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question, because there was something that he challenged that I'm not sure we touched on, and it was the Catholic Church and their placement of a pope or a mediator for the people to God. I know also he's talking about black religion in here, or maybe he didn't say black yet, but he's talking about I guess different sects of Christianity. What are you all's thoughts on the basis of the Catholic religion, and where you confess to a pope, or maybe not a pope, but a priest, and the priest being a mediator to God? What are y'all thoughts on that?
So I'll give a brief little history for everybody, including the audience. So there's the Catholic means universal. So early church, they would say Catholic. It didn't have anything to do with a pope or what we would think of as the modern Roman Catholic Church today. Catholic just means universal. There's no pope recorded until like 900 AD. So the thing is that the Roman Catholic Church, as we know it today, did not exist, for many, many years after, Jesus Christ had resurrected. So my point in saying all that is to say, just understand that we're talking about a Roman Catholic Church. This is more of a closer to modern adaptation than it is historically what we saw in the book of Acts or the early church. So I just want to make that clear for everybody in the audience to understand that part, and to say that obviously I'm not Roman Catholic. I do know the history of what the Roman Catholic did as far as not allowing folks to be able to read the Bible in their languages. They started implementing certain doctrines that you don't see in the Bible anywhere. as far as selling indulgences and being in a mediator with Mary, having to go through the priest. So yeah, those are definitely things that it's fair for Zoe or anybody to attack, because it's one of the biggest denominations of Christianity today. So it's fair to address those things and call those things out. But I would agree with him that stuff is not godly.
Yeah, I don't think it's biblical at all to push your congregation to confess to a priest when you have a high priest.
Topics are done. I've already laid it out. You know, has science disproved miracles? Can we go into that? Oh, there's so many areas. Why do black people who spend trillions of dollars, we will spend $1 trillion next year, only 1% of that money is spent on books?
So pause it real quick. So before we get to the books things, we talks about the subject he just mentioned before that, which was what did he say right before that?
So, has science disproved miracles?
Has science disproved miracles? This doesn't go like David Hume was one of the main guys who was known for, bringing this point up in the past. The thing about science, we got to understand about what science is and what science intended to do. Well, for one, scientists as an institution was developed in the West by Christians. Science was originally called, the scientists were originally called natural philosophers. The Isaac Newtons, the Galileos, and the Copernicus, all these kind of guys right here, they believed that because the Bible taught that God was an intelligent being who created the world in an intelligent way, then it was in fact discoverable. Texts like it's glory of God to conceal a matter and the glory of a king to search it out is a general idea that, maybe I can probably use certain techniques to discover the world because it was intelligently made. It's not randomly made, which some beliefs at the time really believed that it was randomly made, that there was no system to it. There was no reaping and sowing, what we call scientifically the law of uniformity, where you assume that the future would be like the past. One of the foundational rules of science is the law of uniformity. The future will be like the past. That is coming out of the text of the scriptures, and that's what they use to create modern day science. That goes on even in Islam, with the Dark Ages, and with their scientific development they had. So the last point I'll make about science, disproving miracles. Science only tests the physical world.
The natural world.
Some miracles, but not all miracles, are relying on things that are outside of the laws of physics. So it would be beyond science's reach to be able to grasp. It doesn't mean the science is inadequate in that way. Science was never designed to deal with things like that. It'd be like me using my toaster to cool a beverage. You see what I'm saying?
Nice.
Toaster's not inadequate. The toaster probably is a great toaster, but it's not designed to do those things. The same way science is not designed to study the miraculous.
But see, I think it's important that if you don't have that knowledge you have, it's easy to fall victim to what he's saying and think that he's saying something rather than you're kind of saying something that can't be said based on, it's kind of like it doesn't really make sense, because you're saying, did scientists disprove miracles? But scientists were, like you said, I forgot the term you used, but basically
natural philosophers.
Natural philosophers. So being that it was made by Christians who believed in miracles, and they made scientists, the scientists weren't made to disprove the miracles. The scientists were put together by natural philosophers. You know what I'm saying? To be natural philosophers.
Yeah. Isaac Newton wrote more about the Bible than he did anything else. It's a little bit hyperbolic, but he was very much believed that was his inspiration and why he did what he did.
I'm gonna say something really off the wall. How is it that I think it's just the lack of knowledge of most people? And James, you put me on. I didn't know scientists were natural philosophers, but how many people know that, right? So without that knowledge, you can't really apply that logic. You get what I'm saying?
Apply what logic?
as far as what you're saying, as far as the natural philosopher, you can't put it together that the scientists was science made to disprove miracles. You can't really, without that half of your understanding, you can't say that that wasn't what it's meant to be for. Most people think, oh, I'm a scientist. Their job is to disprove God, but in all actuality, they were put as natural philosophers. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. So excellent point. So I want to say science, y'all. Science technically just means knowledge. Have you heard somebody have a conscience? Con is science, right? It means with knowledge. That's what a conscience is. That's the word science again. So the thing is, it really just means knowledge. The scientific method is how we test the physical world. Science is based off of mathematics and logic, right?
Nice,
So that's what science is based off of. So I just want everybody to understand, we got to really unpack science a little bit to really get a firm grasp of it so we can apply it in these different areas and see how it's using it. But ultimately, I just want the audience to recognize that when it comes to science, it's meant to test the physical world.
Yeah, science is, I guess you just thumb it up. Science is based off the faith that the past will repeat in the future. That's all science is. Observing, hoping, having faith that the past is going to repeat in the future.
That's a good point, too. Science is based off confidence. If you listen to a lot of scientists tell you it's confidence that,
the
again,
patterns.
like you said, the future at the past. Yeah, the patterns will hold.
That's why I like that one quote. What's his name? Dr. Kaba said that science is seen spirituality and spirituality is unseen science. That's a way to look at it, too. And like Vulcan said earlier, a lot of scientists, that's what they was doing. They was actually trying to prove and try to, I guess, figure a lot of these things out. So certain miracles they was able to prove and it became science. It wasn't just isolated for just a miracle, It actually has some evidence to go off of. So yeah, I like that quote. Science is seen spirituality and spirituality is unseen science. So and
oftentimes miracles are just things that are characterized as things that can't be explained. That doesn't mean they will never be explained. It just means currently we can't explain it. So there's several things that we understand today that were considered miracles, maybe even just
nice
100 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
Because science is always subject to change. That's a lot of people don't realize. I think they just discovered another planet. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Maybe, don't quote me on it. I think it's a ball of 6 planets. I can't remember. But for years, we went off 9 planets. And not to veer off too far from what the topic is, a lot of people that was in other religious practice or spiritual practice, mainly in the esoteric, will say this is proof that we're spiritual beings. So they would say there's 9 planets in the universe, in space, and we got 9 holes in our body. Nostril, eyes, ears, etc. So this is fact that we are God's art. But I don't want to get. I think he's going to touch on a little bit about this in the future. On the video.
At one point in time, fire was considered a miracle.
Yeah. What was, kinfolk?
Fire.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's get back. If y'all got something else, let's get back into it.
Well, I'll say, as far as the scientist goes, one quote from Albert Einstein that's really good. He says, the problem with us scientists is that we're such poor philosophers.
Boy, that's my favorite.
So there are a lot of there are scientists out there who deny, miracles or deny a deity, whatever the case may be, which is, because they're into scientism, which is or evidentialism, which is the belief, or naturalism, which is the belief that, you only believe what you can prove, or you only believe what is in the natural world. And I won't get into why that's faulty reasoning at this point, but I just want to say that's part of the issue. People think that science may have disproven. I remember on college campus, people would say, "Oh, I'm more scientific than religious." In their mind, they think there's some kind of conflict there when it really isn't. So just keep that in mind when listening to it.
And just to clear up, because I don't think I was clear, I just want to make sure I'm clear when I say that science is not absolute. That's the best way to say it. It's not absolute. It's always subject to change with new evidence and new interpretation. So interpretation is subject to change.
And when you say that, you mean like scientific discovery, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
How much of that goes to Jesus? Wow. Oh, my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me introduce the panel who's on with us right now. We got the esteemed and suited and booted Dr. Reverend Bobby Glanton Smith.
I think that's what the script
That's a demotion from Uncle.
Dr. Reverend Uncle Bobby Glanton.
Jesus.
We can go to 31. Yeah.
Wait.
Hey, somebody heard Zoe Williams.
Wow. So is the
Somebody heard
Arab,
in there.
I'm just saying, is the Arab the new nigga?
No.
Wow. I haven't heard this yet, so this is.
Stop. Good point, Rokisha. Because he not stringing together a whole bunch of coherent ideas.
He's just throwing them out there. What about this one? What about that one?
Sounding more and more like the preachers he trying to
My bad. I was on mute. If you don't mind, Vulcan, read some of the comments before we move on. Fresh, whoever want
For
to go
years,
ahead.
it was believed there was solid rock. Oh, what you say? Thought the mantle of the earth. However, read just this morning that Russia found $49,000 foot down the rock and more like fillable plastic. Oh, it's basically she's saying whatever. It's everything subject to change. She's kind of supporting what you're saying there. As
No
I'm
doubt.
sorry, you know.
Shout out to Rokisha, man.
They ain't
Hey,
got no
she's kind of
business
solid.
drilling
Shout out
that
to
far down.
Rokisha, man.
Yeah, man. When I should be dropping some good
She's
questions.
dropping some jewels.
Yeah.
All right, let's
Bars.
get back into it, y'all. 31. All right,
Stop
31.
drilling. Stop drilling that far down.
What does Rokisha look like?
Hey, this man.
Got some heavy
Let's stay
stuff
focused,
to cover.
y'all. Let's stay
Dr. Phil
focused.
Valentine, welcome to the show, brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
Man, we got to cover this issue on religion. How is it toxic to the African American community? It appears to me that across society, whenever something is wrong with the society, we tend to get a unique version of that sickness. And religion has played such a heavy part on our relationships, on how we interact with each other. Not to say it doesn't for other folk, but our
Hey, pause.
version of it is
I'm
all
sorry, I gotta pause it.
unique.
I just noticed the
Right?
trend.
Speak to us about.
Yes, sir.
So
Speak
look,
on it.
okay, so look, everybody's gonna peep this. For some reason now, he's choosing to identify himself as with the group, but in prior statements he made, it was yours, there. Now he's in court. I wonder why though. I mean, I haven't seen the video yet, so y'all are smiling. Y'all must have seen this. So for some reason, he's including himself in this. So he's taking this side. So when he's going to further speak, anytime somebody does that, they're setting themselves up to agree with what's being said because most of the time they're putting themselves in that group. But I don't know.
I'm doing a break and told him about himself.
Oh, word. But did y'all notice that though?
Yeah. Yep. Distinct change in how he identifies with the topic.
So it's like he's trying to kind of trick your mind into that's a form of manipulation to somebody who's not aware. Somebody's easily manipulated by somebody who can do that because you can jump in and out of when you want to identify and when you don't want to identify. When you want to make your point, you're not going to identify. But it must seem like he must agree with what's about to be said because he's putting himself in that group as a part of that particular group of people, it seems.
Yeah, I also want to point out for the audience, I'm not a fan of the way he's phrasing those questions. Like, oh, religions have done this between our relationships and our marriage. Don't quote me. I think he says, I'm paraphrasing what he's saying. Look, I just want to point out that a lot of the stuff that the questions we might have um, questions we might think to ourselves. It's not necessarily religious questions. This is actually philosophical questions. These are questions you was going to ask yourself if you didn't have a religious background. You was going to ask some of these questions anyway. My role in this relationship with me and my wife, the role I have with my parents, or how I look at society. A lot of these are philosophical questions. Framing it as religions is doing this, I just don't like the way you frame that question. So, any thoughts?
Right. No, I just thought it was interesting when he started identifying. I'm interested to hear what he's going to say now, because
All
now
right.
he's a part of the group. He's a victim.
About some of the problems that religion has had on our community, and then the rest of us will chime in after you lay it out for us.
Jeez Louise.
Well, there are a number of things that you could say right offhand that directly affects our communities in the pocketbook. The church siphons off billions in revenue that could go towards infrastructural building rather than into Cadillacs and Rolls Royces and jet airplanes. You have to know that whenever a people consolidate their resources and actually target a specific issue that they don't have any control over, because they don't have those funds, they become a threat to the presiding force that keeps them in oppression. So what you do is you make sure, as it has been done over the last 10 years, that priests now practicing the so-called religion of Christianity goes to ordination through the IRS. So the IRS is the one who ordinates or ordains sisters now, and they just fly the flag in their flag.
Did somebody say pause?
In their church. So when they found out that the church was actually being used as the Underground Railroad for not only bodies, but for the minds of African peoples, they made sure that they had to infiltrate that church. So after the so-called war of the North and South had stopped, and that Sister Harriet Tubman was no longer working as a spy for the North, and everything had stopped, the church that used to be a segue for us to get out, so that we would start singing these hymns that were actually ways of coded messages, like wade in the water, God's gonna trouble the water, that type of thing. So stay close to the water where the dogs won't smell you, that type of thing.
Wow.
And follow the stars and so forth. So what happened now, because that dried up, Black folks who were stuck at the time when everything stopped, when the railroad ground to a halt, they just stayed in the church and began to actually acclimate to an environment that really was alien to them at that time. So they had no place else to go.
So Dr. Phil, Jeff, Bobby, Mark, where is the codified messages now?
Hold on,
today? Because we are still.
Real quick. Yeah. So when I want to just address one of the words he mentioned when he talks about that word, siphoned. The church is siphoning off money. Yo, that's a word with a negative connotation that's designed to make us look at it in a very disparaging light. I mean, we think about the word siphon, I think about people taking out people's gas and people's cars.
Word.
You know, and so again, they're already showing you their bias, and that's fine. It's okay for them to have a bias, but the thing is that, like, you know, and this is what's important on the Vulcan Soapbox, y'all. Anytime you're going to address somebody else's perspective, a good rule of thumb is to steel man their point, which means to say their point in the best light that it could be in. Because if you beat something at its best, you have definitively beat it. So
nice.
It's pocket watching. You're worried about how much money the church is getting and not getting, you know, and that's fine if you want to do that. But the point that I'm making is just it's not siphoning money. The church is not making anybody give them money. People are willingly giving them their money. I'm a big critic of churches when it comes to money. And I think there's a lot of abuse in it. So I would stand on board with Zoe in a lot of ways when it comes to how the people in the church is handling money. Because the church is built up of little churches, right? You mean the church at large around the world. And you got all these places, local bodies and stuff like that. And not all of them are handling it the right way. There's a lot of corruption, just like there is in every other aspect of life. And so I just want people to understand that just because he's right I'll mention one term. We don't want to flood about a bunch of logical terms, but one is the composition fallacy. And the composition fallacy is saying what's true of the part is true of the whole. Just because there are some parts of the church that are doing some things that are not right doesn't mean the entirety of the church can be blamed for what a few parts are doing. It doesn't mean the whole thing is corrupt because a certain part of it's corrupt. And again, everybody, that's the composition fallacy. To say what's true of the part is true of the whole. And conversely, it's equally fallacious to say what's true of the whole is true of the part.
Right.
Yeah, and I just want to add for those that might think originally the show, the name of the show is supposed to be nitpickers. So I guess that's what we're doing to a certain degree. The reason why we actually have to point out the composition fallacy with these guys, because these guys are on the platform teaching. So we got to hold them to a higher standard to see if they operate under their intellectual virtues. So what I mean by intellectual virtues, to challenge you and make sure that you're not being led by your implicit biases. And nothing wrong with having biases. It's hard to really, it's hard to manage that if you don't have a template or the tools, what I call these essential critical thinking tools. If you don't have these tools, it's hard to really manage that. So we're not necessarily nitpicking just to be nitpicking. These are guys that consider themselves teachers. I think this is Dr. Phil Valentine. If those, y'all can Google him. Well-renowned, conscious, Black spiritualist. To simplify his title, I'm pretty sure he does more, but yeah, just to add on to what Vulcan was saying, this is the purpose and this is the motivation of the show. Hold to these teachers and people that's in front of these audience and listeners to a high standard as far as intellectual integrity. I mean, all the things that's included with intellectual virtues.
That was well-needed clarity. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
We're ready?
Yeah. It's definitely some tables that need to get flipped out here.
In peril. Where are the codified messages today? Jeff?
They are in hip hop music. They are in, I say this all the time. Mussolini said this: a nation is only as strong as its secrets. Black people don't have any secrets because we put all our shortcomings to dance music. So there is nothing there's nothing about being Black that everybody don't know. There's stuff about being Jew I don't know nothing about. Stuff about being Mexican, stuff about being everybody knows everything about being Black that needs to stop.
You got a point there, because Captain Smiley says, well, what are we going to do as Black people for the next year? And everybody get up on stage to get their 15 minutes of fame and tell everybody what our plans are about.
Thank you.
And you know what's interesting? My perspective, and then I'm going to throw it to Bobby really quickly. You know what's interesting? I see religions in the same light I see sororities and fraternities.
Absolutely. Or bowling teams.
Right? Because what it's about is relationships and connections. It's not really about spirituality. Because you'll have some people that say, I'm spiritual. I'm not religious. And this wise brother from the hand of Ifa, I was talking to this brother's name is Baba Femi. He said, the people who say they're spiritual, but yet don't have a ritual, can't call themselves spiritual because ritual is in the word. What rituals are you doing? And Christianity doesn't have any rituals, really. Go ahead.
I got a question for you.
Let's pause it right there. We'll probably have to go a little bit further back to make sure we catch all the this guy's saying right here. But I mean, he's gonna clarify later on because I've seen this one before. But as of right now, just to address, rituals and the word spiritual. But obviously, we all know that the Abrahamic religions, which he's mainly dealing with, have plenty of rituals in there from the commune. What is it called?
Communion.
Yeah, communion. Baptisms. We can go on and on. That's just the Christian. You got Judaism, you got Islam that has the pillars and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of rituals in these Abrahamic ones, which was the main one I think he's really focusing on for the purpose of this show. So, that's just in poor taste to use that as a point. I think he's just kind of rambling at that point. There's a point that he made earlier. Did anybody remember any other earlier points? I'm having a hard time recalling his other earlier points. There were some things.
What was it?
We don't know. It's cool. We can move on. But there was something he mentioned earlier.
We can remind him if you don't mind. If we can remind him,
Yeah. We can.
Five message in the
Yeah, I
Go
didn't
ahead,
want
Fresh.
to
All right.
messages.
He was asking about where the codified messages in the music were today, and his co-host also made a point about black people telling everyone all of our secrets because a nation
Yeah.
is only as powerful as its secrets.
Yeah, and a nation, we're not a nation, so
We're
for
not.
one, so that's a failed
He also
point.
quoted Mussolini. I let that sizzle as it will.
Is that the point? Do we need to continue rewinding, or is that the point?
Nah, that was kind of what he was saying.
All
Yeah,
right.
let's go. Move forward.
All right, move forward then.
Wise brother from the spiritual, but yet don't have a ritual, can't call themselves spiritual because ritual is in the word. What rituals are you doing? And Christianity doesn't have any rituals really.
Go
ahead.
I got a question, Brad. How important is it to believe in something versus believing in nothing? And if we should believe in something, what should we believe in?
That's great.
Good
That's
question.
a great. And let me give you my answer. Then I'm gonna throw it to Dr. Phil Valentine and Bobby. My answer to that is believing in something is like taking credit for a painting that's already painted. Believing in nothing is at least you start with a blank canvas and whatever is in your mind can be put on the canvas. I tell people this, my concept of God is a living canvas and your thoughts are the tapestry. Do you understand what I'm saying? Whatever the thinker thinks, the prover will prove. Thoughts are constructive and creative. And if you haven't challenged the thoughts that are already pre-programmed in your being, then guess what that leaves you? That leaves you a societal robot who is reacting or reenacting something that was already put in you without challenging it.
What's interesting about this, I wrote my book on listening, and one of my favorite quotes.
I want to pause that
from
real
a British
quick. About this believing, it makes no sense. It's impossible to believe in nothing. We as human beings can't really conceptualize nothing because we've never experienced nothing. The best we can do is try to imagine like a blank black surface or a blank white surface, right? We try to do that the best we can, but it's really impossible for us to really conceptualize the word nothing. And sorry, go ahead.
Even if his statement were to be correct and you believe in a blank canvas that's painted by your own thoughts, all you're saying is believing yourself. You're not believing in nothing.
Yeah,
you're
saying
believing
your thoughts.
in yourself. You're believing in your thoughts. You're believing that there's such thing as belief.
Nice.
You're believing a lot of things already. And then
the law of identity.
Yeah, you believe in the law of identity. That something is what it is and it's not what it's not. You're already believing so much, just even say you believe, period.
And then you have to question at some point, right? If we're talking about belief, the earliest man asked the question where these thoughts that they are painting their canvases with come from.
Where they come from?
Where do they come from?
There's science that suggests that babies are already born with certain beliefs. Like one belief that they say that babies are already born with is the belief that things don't just pop in and out of existence. So for instance, if I have a baby in front of me and I have like a hat in my hand and I put the hat behind my back and I put the baby doesn't, the studies show the baby doesn't think the hat doesn't exist anymore. The baby thinks the hat still exists somewhere.
Hidden,
Even they don't know where it is. And so there's some beliefs that human beings already are hardwired to believe certain things from birth. So I just I'm making that point to say that it's not possible to believe in nothing. So when he makes it seem like nothing is better than something, as far as belief goes, there's no evidence supports that we can actually believe in nothing if we wanted to.
Psychoanalyst, and he said the purest form of listening is to listen without memory or desire. And what he meant by that is when you listen with memory, you're listening with a past personal agenda that you're trying to plug the world into, and when you listen with desire, you're listening with a future personal agenda, but you're not listening to what the world is and its essence that it's trying to communicate to you.
Bobby G?
The longer I live, the more I believe.
Well, let me pause that real quick.
And
so I definitely agree with this gentleman is saying. I mean, it's a very poetic way of saying what you want to do is filter out your biases. Yeah. Confirmation bias, reference group biases, all the different biases that plague us, are what we want to see happen versus what we don't want to see happen. All those things can at times convolute what the real truth is and what we really need to be deciphering out of the information. So that's a really good point that he's bringing up right there about the fact that it's a very poetic way of saying it, that we should make sure that when we are observing something, we're trying to do it in a very unbiased way, and we let the information lead where it's meant to lead.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Like you said earlier, some of our biases can cloud our judgment, and like we said in the past shows, our minds tend to be inherently lazy. So it's we're dealing with the confirmation bias when we're listening to somebody. Sometimes, if not checked, we can fall victim to a lot of these talking points, without really investigating what's being said. So yeah, definitely. I like what's his name, Dr. G. That was a good
Spirit.
statement.
And I say that in this construct of growing up in a small town in Tennessee, and being immersed in the gospel, so to speak, growing up in church and all of that, and being taught to fear God. Went along with the program most of my adolescence. And as I began to question organized religion based upon the practitioners of organized religion, I evolved more into a spiritual being who believed in a spirit, because I can't get away from the fact that there's just too many complications to the human experience that I can't explain, but exist. But for the grace of something, go I. Because I've been in so many situations where I lived and other people perished that I cared.
So this is a common theme that I hear out in the world. People talk about organized religion, organized religion, organized religion. Y'all, there's only two options. This is called the law of excluded middle. There's organized religion and there's disorganized religion. It's only two options. Either something's organized or it's not, right?
Yeah.
Or you can say there's no religion if you believe in that. There's three options you can say at most. But as far as religion goes, there's only two options, organized or disorganized. And a reason why this is important, audience, is because when somebody says organized religion, there's a certain stigma that's already attached to it. And we go, organized religion, I've seen it. I've seen the abuse. If you think that organized religions has problems, which it does, wait till you see disorganized religion. That's riddled with a whole lot more issues like everything else in life that's disorganized. So don't compare organized religion to perfection. Again, that's called the nirvana fallacy. When you want things have to be perfect, you're comparing something to an impossible standard that nothing ever can match. Obviously, organized religion is going to have challenges and problems. If you're comparing it to perfection, your idea of perfection, it's going to fall short. We don't live in that world. We live in the actual world. So we got to compare organized religion to disorganized religion. And I think when you compare those two, organized religion, like most, if not all things that are organized, is going to look a whole lot better than its disorganized cousin.
Yeah, just for the audience, again, I'm not able, usually on this platform, I usually put up the definition of some of the terms we're using because I know these terms are not everyday language. So I'm going to just try to help y'all understand what Vulcan is saying. If you study the fundamentals of logic, it's three areas. You got the first one is the law of identity. Second one is the law of contradiction, and then there's the law of the excluded middle. Those are three fundamentals of logic. So I just wanted to put that out there if you can. I guess I want to advise you to do it now. But go ahead.
And I'll put a little bit of meat on the bone on as far as disorganized religion part. That's a lot of the spiritualities that we see out here. And what I mean by they're disorganized, there's not a lot written on it that's absolute or universal. So let's take astrology, for instance, right? Astrology is in the Western world is different than Chinese astrology, which is different than Indian astrology, which is different than Sumerian astrology. Some astrology has 13 zodiacs, some have 12.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, zodiac and astrology. We talk to people who actually do astrology. Some astrologers say only real true astrology is that was done with a spirit guide, right? So if you don't have a spirit guide, you're not doing real astrology. There's actually debate within the astrologer community about whether pop astrology, what we read on the internet, what we see on the news, is actually real astrology. So they debate, well, it's good because it keeps astrology popular, but it's not really real astrology that we do here in our offices locally. You know what I'm saying? So there's a big debate. And the thing is, there's no Bible for it. There's no unifying dictate.
No
And it's
organization.
not respected. And it's not respected in the science discipline. You know, at
Well,
one time.
that's a different topic. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I
Oh,
want to get to this disorganized religion folks right now. So I'm just using that
okay,
as an
yeah.
example. So a lot of these guys, including the guy Zoe here, and other folks y'all might hear speaking about their spiritualities that are, when they say they're not religious, they're in the spiritualities.
Mhm.
Where is it documented? How can I tell if they're interpreting it correctly or incorrectly?
Mm-hmm.
When I see these guys mention they're this religion, African spirituality, there's this African spirituality, I'm like, okay, let me see the primary source document you're working off of. They don't.
Right.
It hasn't been tested.
There's no one really there. So what one guy says is true, another guy says is true. Who gets to know?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever if I argue with somebody about the Quran, I can look at the text of the Quran and say, nah, that's not what that says. You know what I'm saying? Nope, that don't say that. You're wrong. When I look at the Judaic documents, I can say, that's not what the Torah reads. You're misinterpreting that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of these spiritualities, and the last little analogy I'll make to it is like constitutions. Some countries have unwritten constitutions. Those places have a hard time regulating themselves because there's nothing you can go to dispute issues.
Yeah.
America, the world, we have a lot of written constitutions so that we go to Supreme Court and say, this goes against my constitutional right. And I'm saying that because I'm saying this document, this written text right here, I can use to judge against what's actually happening. So I just want everybody to understand organized religion.
Like in Texas.
Sorry, go ahead, Perspective.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, I don't know if y'all heard what's going on in Texas as far as the barbed wire and the fence, and how the federal government went to the Supreme Court and tried to get basically approval of to overtake the Texas military, but Texas wasn't budging. So what most people don't understand, they think probably the federal government, Supreme Court, and Texas military all are one thing. They're all separate. So it's kind of like, to piggyback off, kind of give you another perspective on how that looks. You know what I'm saying? Whenever the hierarchy is set.
Shout out to Perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I want to build on what Vulcan was saying. This is my issue with a lot of the Eastern practices or Eastern spiritual, what he kept saying, spiritualists or spiritual practices. It lacks accountability. Vulcan pointed out, if Iman or a pastor is doing something wrong, at least the Judea or at least the Abrahamic faith, you can actually have a template or a manual where you could call the person out and actually debate to see if this person is doing the right or wrong thing. With a lot of these Eastern um, practices, or like I said, spiritual, on the ontology side of the game, how do you hold them accountable? If what Zoe is saying right now, when you're watching him on this episode, how can you test to say he's right or wrong? What do we have to test astrology? Say, hey, July, well, what's August? August is Leo. I could prove that this month is wrong. You know, I'm just throwing an example out there right now.
Yeah.
What can you go to really hold these people accountable, actually challenge a lot of these ideas, which has already been proven that they already added too much to the year anyway. You got, Octagon is that's where we get October, but that's the 10th month. December, DEC is decimal, that's 10, but it's December the 12th month. So there's already discrepancies already with the astrology. But like I said, I don't want to get too in depth with that.
And so one thing I want to point out, a really good point there, is that so a lot of these spiritualities, science could not derive from them. Going back to what he's mentioned earlier about science has disproved God and stuff like that. The reason why the science as an institution, not to say there weren't elements of science around the world, but science developed as an institution like it is in the Western world, where that's actually like a priestly robe to wear, that lab coat, that scientific gear. We respect it because we hold information and discovery in the highest regard. That's a very Judeo-Christian value. And so the thing is, and you got to understand, these spiritualities, they're so chaotic, you can't bring science out of that type of fertilizer. That ground, that soil. I want to say soil, that kind of a soil, because it's too chaotic, it's too all over the place. There's nothing foundational there that's consistent that science can come out of.
What about those that would suggest that if you do have a written manual that you could police your religion by, then it is man-made and therefore fallible, which flies in the face of true spirituality.
Say it again. I missed a piece of that. Unless somebody else already, if they got it, they can go ahead and address it. Somebody else already got it.
Nah, just repeat it again, fresh, if you don't mind.
What do we say to those who would argue that if your religion does have a written manual that you could use to police said religion, then it is man-made, therefore fallible, and flies in the face of true spirituality?
Anybody want to tackle that? Anybody want to tackle
that?
I'm already ready to respond, but I want to give everybody.
I would just say show it. A lot of time when I hear these guys that practice these rituals, I never hear them or them actually present a manual that's from the past. I hear modern people write about some of these things. So it's different sources for these practices. So if you do have something written down, where is it at? Show me anything from the past that.
My question was, if you have something written down, it was.
I'm ready to answer this record, but go ahead.
Well, yeah. Let me finish clarifying for the rest of the group. They may not have understood what my question was. Clearly, I'm playing the devil's advocate at this point. But
for the devil, man.
I'm saying the devil.
Hey, one thing gonna get you the laugh you're looking for. My point is,
we got to get to the definition of the devil soon, but go ahead.
Would argue that if your religion does have a manual, then it was man-made, it was man-written, and therefore fallible.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, let's read the comments and then we'll get back to the question. So we got Rakisha has been lighting up in the comments. Facts, I couldn't type manipulation point fast enough. That goes to somebody's earlier point about the manipulation. Tracking spirituality versus spiritualism, question mark, different discussion. And then the same Rakisha again. I wonder if that is the point of those religions. There is no accountability, confusion. Science is proven bringing accountability. So anybody want to tackle Freshly's point, or want me to go ahead and tackle it?
I'm interested. Yeah, what y'all got? Vulcan, you go last.
I don't think that. I think you kind of. I'm thinking you understand that because the example you're using is kind of like the scriptures. It's man-made, it's man-written, and it's used as a standard. You get what I'm saying? So
correct.
I don't know if that can hold any truth to it, because then that's everything in a sense.
Everything that's documented. That's my point. We're arguing religions that have written manuals versus religions that don't have written manuals in the spirit of accountability. And I'm asking, what about those who would say that if your religion does have a written manual, i.e. a Bible or Quran or scriptures or any sort of set of rules or regulations, that is a man-made construct and therefore inherently fallible?
I think at times if that's done, it's usually justifiable because there's no accountability, there's no hierarchy. There's no measuring stick like Enos was saying. You're not able to hold them accountable. You're not able to measure their beliefs by anything. So it's based on subjectivity at that point, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, it's definitely based on subject. It's definitely a subjective thing when you don't have a written. But what I'm saying is, there are those who would argue that if someone wrote down your manual, then it was written by man and therefore inherently fallible, or for lack of a better word, not. It can make mistakes. If a human wrote it, then it must not. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be something that's defended by.
Okay, I think, but the only way you can see it is if a human wrote it. If a human didn't write it, you wouldn't be able to see it. There wouldn't be any evidence of it. Only for you to see it would have to be written by a human.
Possibly.
God did right on them tablets.
Are you
Go
speaking
ahead.
of modern day or?
I'm talking about period.
Okay. Okay, Vulcan.
So yeah, I know there's more video to get to, so I'll go ahead and say. I mean, originally when the question was asked, it ended with true spirituality. So when I first heard that, it wouldn't be true spirituality if it was man-made and fallible. It wouldn't be true spirituality. To me, that would run into the fallacy of the real McCoy fallacy, which is saying something's, well, that's not the true version of this. Who's to say that person need to demonstrate for me that spirituality can't be fallible, that spirituality can't be man-made? Who said that? Where did they get that from? That's what I'd want to know. Because now we're setting up this rubric that already establishes spirituality as something that's perfect. I see no reason to think that. Love is spiritual, justice is spiritual. But we have imperfect pictures of those things. And we do our best to, some of us do our best to try to embody those things to the best of our ability. So I would say there's nothing that suggests that spirituality has to be perfect. So it would be on them. If they're going to set that as a rubric, I would need them to show me where they got that from.
Right. Or
I should try to.
Right. Is it in their rubric that man cannot participate in spirituality?
Yeah.
And
that's one of the.
Does the deity create all? And if the deity creates all, then where is man?
Yeah. I want to add to that's a good point, King Dave. That's one of the ways you can preserve religion or your practice is writing it down. I know we heard the ancient African proverb, each one teach one, but it could you could preserve it that way by talking about it and people remember things. But one of the best way of preserving things is writing it down. I mean, not just a spiritual practice, just at your job when they write down rules or regulations at your job. It's easier to retain and it's easier to preserve. So the person's asking that question, there's a lot of ways I can answer that, but yeah.
Yeah, you just want to know what do you mean by spirituality? How are you defining that? I mean, I can't hear a talk, I can't see.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
This conversation finna go crazy.
Deeply for. And I've seen situations turn overnight from good to bad, bad to good. And there's a force out there that governs, I think, indiscriminately. In other words, I don't think God is punitive.
Yes.
You see, I really don't believe that. How can you be God and punish innocent people? You see some people that they work hard, they go through all these changes, and they never seem to get a break. And to me, that's the forces of the universe in play.
Right.
As opposed to the construct of religion, quote unquote.
And we're about to take a quick break, but before we do, let me give a correction. Christianity does have rituals. However, if those rituals are the remix of your culture's history and not the actual rituals from your culture, you're under the revised version of what was really yours. And listen, Dr. Sabi came in here once and told us Black people aren't eating the food that Black people were eating when they were in Africa.
Let's pause
and
right
so they're
here.
taking.
My people. One thing that I notice over and over again, whether it's on the street or watching, intellectual people speak online, we struggle with what a nationality is. We struggle on what ethnicity is. We struggle on what a culture is. When he says a remix of our culture, he must mean our ancestors and Africa's culture, because our culture,
James.
it's not it's not a remix of that. So what he's saying is anachronistic, which means he's getting the time wrong. He's putting and meaning bad and then chronos, having to do with time, right? He's getting the whole timeline is all jacked up, right? Our culture today is, the rituals of Christianity is not a remix of our culture today. Matter of fact, our cultures are an outgrowth of Judeo-Christian values because of the context in which we were brought up, right? So again, it doesn't make sense. What he's saying doesn't actually make sense. Now, can we go, I know what he meant by what he said, but again, that's fine if we're going to do that, but we need to make the distinction here that this is an intelligent man who writes books for a living. These words mean things. When he says your culture, that's what will get you to identify with it and make it almost a sacred thing in your mind So you're like, well, they're remixing our culture, and now I'm offended. No. They're not remixing your culture.
Yeah.
Who's
And then
they?
I like to add, sometimes as
Nice
a
to see.
people,
Nice to see.
as a people, we confuse culture with pigment, right? So when you go to Europe, Spain and
Nice,
France
Gary.
are right next to each other. Those are two different cultures, two different countries. It's the same in Africa. A lot of spiritual practice that was going on in Africa, Nigeria is not the same as Egypt. Egypt is not the same as South Africa. Just because we all have the same pigment, don't mean we have the same culture or the same religion.
So
Nice.
let me jump in real quick. Let's define a culture. We learned this in school. Your
Mhm.
cuisine, what kind of food you eat,
Yeah.
right? The
Mhm.
artifacts, your tools you would use. If we were archaeologists and we were going to go, an anthropologist, and we were trying to like excavate Mayan or Nordic culture, right? We want to see what kind of tools were they. We're using iron tools. Did they have a sword? Did they have a gun? We want to know what kind of food did they eat? Were they eating grain? Were they eating this? That's a culture. Their religion, their dance, their beverages. These are just, I'm just naming a few things, culture to cultivate, how they're cultivated, the values and mores that they use to sustain their society. So again, our culture is the culture you're actually practicing right now. What did you eat today? What do you watch on TV? If you're in the NFL and the NBA, that's a different culture than your ancestors who were playing something different. You dance different than maybe your ancestors danced. You see what I'm saying? Definitely eat different foods than they ate. You see what I'm saying? So you're not the culture of your ancestors. Culture is how you're cultivated. You are being cultivated in the here and now. They're being cultivated in the past, and it wasn't the same. Y'all know where I live. There's a large African population out here. They do not identify with how we're cultivated over here. You know what I'm saying?
Same pigment, though. Same pigment.
Same pigment, different food, different dance, different a lot of things. How their family structure is set up. Less patriarchal, more patriarchal. It's all different. What do the women do? What do the men do? How do they value education?
So basically, he's getting away with murder.
He's just using inflammatory statements and comments and language in order to get to elicit emotional reaction from the culture.
Yeah,
from people who identify with the culture.
James.
Go ahead.
Vulcan, I was going to say, Vulcan always points out how Umar does the same thing. It's the crowd. It's the people you're speaking to. No one's able to hold you accountable to what you're saying. Like you just throw out the word culture like that and just misidentify it with a group of people and who don't even identify. You could have all melanated people in one room and have 7 different cultures.
Absolutely.
You know but he could say that in his realm and his circle, and oh yeah, brother, preach on, brother.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's getting away with murder. I would say in this intellectual space.
I was kind of, I wasn't serious.
Go ahead for a second. My bad.
No, I just wasn't serious about the murder thing. I was kind of,
Oh yeah. Just I understand what you're saying. I know it was a figure of speech, but he is being sloppy with his intellectualism. He said in the beginning that he's a seeker of truth, or we should value truth and pave our roads to truth. But so far, what I'm watching, I'm questioning his intellectual integrity right now.
Yeah, so I would say at best, Dino's point, at best, he's being intellectually sloppy at best.
Yeah.
At worst, he's crafting his words to purposely, as Freshly pointed out eloquently before, to elicit a response out of the audience that's going to cause them to hate whatever he wants them to hate and love this nebulous concept that he hasn't really ironed out yet.
Oh, is this the same clip he was talking about we, our, and all that in too?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. This is segment.
So this was because we've interrupted so many times. I really, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm thinking he was setting us up. He was setting us up for this. He was setting himself up for this. You remember I had said this must be something he identifies with?
Mm-hmm.
And then
I'm gonna read these comments when we get back to the video if y'all ready to it. If our ancestors are actually African, not all those called blacks are of these ancestors' culture. And then facts.
Word.
I'll read the facts one.
Hey, Rakisha's on point, bro. Whoever the hell she is, oh man, jeez Louise, brother.
On sicknesses that don't belong to them.
She
I
answered
believe
the
when you
question,
practice
though.
rituals
Who's
that you
Rakisha?
didn't write, that you didn't create, you're going to take on a spiritual sickness that doesn't belong to you either. So listen, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back,
Spiritual
we're going to go deeper with Dr. Phil Valentine and the Zoe What Morning Show.
Like I said, the spiritual sickness, I notice a lot of times where a lot of people say they spiritual is very ambiguous. You don't, they never really, I ain't gonna say never, I don't want to use the absolute term. I rarely hear them actually define what they mean by spiritual. I'm a spiritualist, you know. So this, him saying you take on a spiritual sickness, I would like to challenge him. What do that mean exactly?
Let's go. God fraud. Let's holler.
I understand. We need to move beyond color.
Oh, this is crazy.
That, but y'all raised it.
This is crazy.
If you start it, I'll end it for you. Don't start nothing. It won't be nothing. But we got a problem. Black people got a problem. Now we can move to color blindness and always look at the man by the content of his character, never the color of his skin. I'm down for that. You get my vote. Yay and amen. I'm for that. But before we get there, we need to hear some truth. Black people and white folk. Black people got a problem. And it's a God problem. When black people see the world, I don't care. You can train them. You can train a black man to be a physician. You can train him to be an astrophysicist. You can train him to be a lawyer, but you can't train him to understand the world. He doesn't know. I'm telling you. There's not 2 cents worth of difference between a mass murderer. There's not 2 cents of difference between a petty thief that's locked away in prison than a black doctor when it comes to understanding the world. Listen, you listen to me. We got to deal with this. And we need to begin to acknowledge it, talk about it, ask God to help us, because only God can help black people where they are. Black people had Africa, that big old continent over there. They never built one boat that was seaworthy. Not one.
What?
There's not one monument in Africa, in all of Africa. I know you're talking about Egypt. Egypt is not Africa. There are no great cities that were built. Even before the first colonization of white people coming to the shores of Africa or the slave ships, black men built nothing. No sewer system, no houses above one level, and none of them made out of stone. All of them made out of grass and wood. Black men, before the white man ever got to Africa.
Now, listen.
And the entire.
Just want to say that the comments of this man is not represented. No, I'm just playing.
I don't go there. I don't go to that. I wasn't at that service.
No, well, I will say, like I said, like and subscribe, guys. Like and subscribe to the channel. Let's keep that in mind.
Hell.
Now listen. This dude is powerful.
There's a hole in time.
No, this dude is powerful. He has a tremendous following. He even has the 3 letters behind his name, PhD.
Poor, hassled, and depressed. Check this out.
And he's teaching this.
This dude
If there's a hell below, he's definitely going to go.
Dude, there's a hole. This is the only proof that there's a hole in time. And somebody reached through back to 1805 and got this shade tree house nigga here and pulled him forward and said, here, we need you to talk to some more folk because they are awakening. I need you to put them back to sleep. Go.
Dr. G had a question during the break. Dr. G, go, and then we're coming to Valentine.
Yeah, Bobby said something about organized religion, and the question I have is that many people say I'm against organized religion, and I'm just wondering if a group of people can stay organized for good without it crossing over and getting corrupted by greed or some thirst for power. Because it seems like when you hear the word organized, it should be neutral, but it seems like it turns, towards the negative and the hurtful. So I'm just curious. I don't know.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Bobby, you want to answer that, and then we're going to Dr. Valentine.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I haven't seen any evidence of it, historical evidence. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of, how could I say that? Organizing it's a lot of positive benefits for being organized. So, I guess the opposite of being disorganized.
I think he was kind of saying that, wasn't he?
Yeah, he framed it in the question, but saying it, yes, he said he didn't know. So, what's your thoughts on that perspective?
I think he hit it right on the. I think he said it right on point, because the word organized usually gives off like a negative connotation to most people. So I don't like organized religion. Well, something organized is usually in good terms. Like my room is organized, my thoughts are organized, my bed's organized. Like organized usually has
my
a
organs are
positive connotation.
organized.
Huh?
My organs are organized.
You know what I'm saying? Nice. So it's like usually organized has a positive connotation to it. So, but when it comes to religion, it seems like it's just twisted immediately into a negative connotation.
But to who? To who is it a negative connotation? To who?
To when most people use that, most people don't usually use the word organized and religion together simultaneously whenever they're in agreement with it. Usually if you use the word organized religion, it follows a negative connotation or goes with the negative connotation. Am I wrong on that? What do y'all think on that?
Yeah, I think that you know what you're saying and what the guy's question was, it aligns with what was said earlier. It's like you know, you're trying to use the word, or you're trying to label something as organized religion as if that's a bad thing. But the guy pretty much came and was like, I want you to think about it this way. Is it the organized religion? Is that the bad part? Or is it what people sometimes do within organizations that taint them? So what is the bad part? Is it that it's organized, or is it the disorganization that happens that messes it up? And I think so. I'm like, so now you can't just say it's the organized religion. No, it's actually disorganization that's messing up the organized religion.
Nice. You were talking about the self-righteous thing when he did that earlier. I think that's what you were referring to, right?
I think it was Vulcan or Snipes who mentioned the organization part earlier.
Oh, okay.
And they were just saying that you know how the attack on the organization is like a fallacy. Like, it's not the organization. What's the organization? It was Vulcan. He was like, it's either organization or disorganization. So you can't attack organization, though. In our common jargon, we have trained ourselves to say this word is bad. This has a connotation of bad. Even the word religious now has some would say a bad connotation, where people say I'm not religious, but you look up the definition religious and you are religious. But what you're
And the
really trying
scripture
to
says
say,
there's good religion too.
right? And what you're really trying to say is I don't hold on to traditions that have nothing to do with my religion. But it's like, the way people are using words, there's a term for how you use the word in a modern language versus what it's really meant, the word really means. And so I really
James,
feel
what
like
is that? Vulcan.
Yes, sir.
What's that word, man? He's looking for.
The word for what?
I'm just saying that sometimes we have words that they have a modern meaning and people interpret the meaning in this modern sense, but it may not fit the actual definition of the word. In total. But the point I was making was,
definitely get what you're saying. Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying on that.
Yeah. So yeah, the point I was just making was that I feel like even though that guy is sitting there in that corner, he's presenting alternate thoughts as questions to challenge, like how you challenged Vulcan earlier. You was like, is it organization that's the problem? Or getting deeper into it, is it disorganization within an organization that's the problem?
Nice.
Can you have an organization, and at what point does the organization go south?
That boy David's solid, boy.
That's how that stuff happened. I remember in the movie Batman, there was a scene in the movie Batman, the one with Bane, and where one of the guys was kind of discovering that Wayne Corp, whatever it's called, some of the money is going to certain things that don't add up. And he's an accountant. He was an accountant, and he was like, and he was like, I think Bruce Wayne's Batman, and then Morgan Freeman made him look silly in that scene, right? But the whole thing is there was disorganization on the books. And so the guy was going like, this organization, I'm seeing this disorganization, so I'm believing this is because of this reason. So it goes perfectly to what, King David's point is, which is just saying that, in organized spaces, whether it's the military, a corporation, a church, whatever it is, it's the disorganization within those organizations that is really where you find a lot of the bad stuff that we don't like about religion. So the solution is not more disorganization or to flee organization altogether. The solution is to bring organization to those places where there's still some disorganization.
Right.
Literally.
Well, I think there's a very important relationship between organized and organic. And if we trended more toward organic, we'd have less problems with organizations. Because if there's something common that we have is that we're born to die. All right. And there's some other commonalities. If we built along those lines that would survive universally, all this other divisive things that we run into, then we wouldn't run into the problems that we face when we deal with religion in this organized form.
And typically, whenever something is organized, it's organized along a linear path. One thing about spirituality and relationships too, it's non-linear. There's you can't you understand what I'm saying? I have a goal to get to God. No, you are God and have been God every when and every now. Do you understand? Like, you don't have to get to what you are. You've been that. And even your scriptures in a rudimentary way will validate that if you were reading it for that purpose. Remember, whatever the thinker thinks, the prover will prove, and you've been programmed to be not only a sheep, but one who is blind. So you can't even see the shepherd, but you're so willing to follow the shepherd. Valentine, talk to me.
You talked about belief. I took a belief as a form of conditioning, a form of preemptive consent, something that has to do with a conceptual reinforcement, along as you were speaking so eloquently about the linearization of an idea and a behaviorism. So when we talk about we believe in Jesus Christ, pretty much most of us, if the boys in the Christian house, came up with that belief, not knowing anything else. And if they did not have any exposure to any outside catechisms or any outside cultures, that's all their world would know. And so Christianity tends to set up its own antibiotics, its own defense mechanisms by telling you that if you were to stray outside of these constructs, these belief constructs, then you are imperiling yourself. So they kind of put danger signs where there never really was dangers. And so we are headed toward, like you say, sheep. And what is a sheep except the ass of the other sheep in front of it? And doesn't know anything beyond that. So I wanted to touch upon belief as being a kind of a conditioning process that the environment reinforces
real quick.
Every day, through television, through your mama, through everything. Now,
I'm going to want you to play it back, but real quickly, how far until we are midway? We're definitely not going to be able to cover this whole thing. Probably have to just finish the rest off of it on Thursday. How far are we from the halfway point?
Yeah, they don't have line too much.
Halfway mark.
Huh?
I think we're close to the halfway mark. Hold on for a minute. The video is an hour and 41 seconds, hour and 41 minutes. We have a 46. So
oh yeah, we're not gonna. We won't make that midway. So yeah, I mean, one thing there's something I was gonna bring about what he said in the past, but I think I've kind of forgotten the point that goes along with it. But I know it was on the belief. You mind replaying what he just said?
it's Dr. Phil Valentine?
Yes, sir.
Zoe. Okay.
Well, from Zoe too, I think. I guess I don't remember.
if you
Maybe like a minute behind.
Linear?
I'm telling you,
You go back like a
did
minute.
not have any exposure to
Thinks the prover will prove, and you've been programmed. You've been that. Like, no, you are God and have relationships too. It's non-linear. There's you can't you understand what I'm saying? I have a goal to get to God. No, you are God and have been God every when and every now. Do you understand? Like, you don't have to get to what you are. You've been that. And even your scriptures in a rudimentary way will validate that if you were reading it for that purpose.
All right. He said the scriptures in a rudimentary way validates that. Do you all agree that the scriptures prove that you are God?
You know, you got anything on that?
Yeah, I didn't hear it. Hold on for me. Nah, yeah, you go ahead, Vulcan.
Yeah, I'll address it. So yeah, I definitely don't believe the scriptures prove that in any kind of real way. No, not at all. Matter of fact, quite the opposite. I mean, you know, I would say the reality is this: one, his God is undefined at this point. I don't know what he means by God. Does he mean universe? Does he mean I don't know. We don't know what he means by God at this point. So he hasn't defined his term. So at this point, it's meaningless to me. You know, when he's saying that part. But then another part that he's making is that you can't go to God because you are God. He's playing off what we would understand God to be. Like for most of the people he's talking to is going to be more Judeo-Christian, whether Islam, Jew, or they're Christian. We definitely didn't create the universe, which is what we would attribute to God. So I think what he's doing is he's being very haphazard with his language.
Yeah. I think he's you just referring to where I think he's talking about is that ye are God's lowercase g.
Mm-hmm.
And the understanding of whose image we were created in.
Yeah.
But we do know that within the Judeo-Christian religion, these lowercase g's, which we would be defined as, worship the Almighty G. And so to take that part, like Jesus said, hey, isn't it in your word that says, ye are God? But to take it and twist it, Rokisha, like she said, the deception in this man's presentation. Like I took that word and then I spent it and told you, you ain't gotta look for God because you the God. But that's why it was so important in the word that it was a lowercase g.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, this.
I ain't make myself.
So you can't even see the shepherd, but you're so willing to follow the shepherd. Valentine, talk to me.
Sorry, real quick. Pause it real quick.
All right.
One thing he talked about, we can't see the shepherd, but he mentioned earlier about, we believe in things that we don't know and stuff like that. That's how we start off in life. When you're a kid, I have children. When I was a child, you take a lot of adults' messages to you and principles to you at face value as a child.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we all start off. When my parents said, "Don't touch that, that's hot. Don't go out in the street. Don't do this, do this, don't do this, do this." I had no way of vetting their words. I had to really just trust, really have faith in what they were telling me was right.
Yeah, confidence. Yeah.
And my issue with some of what he's saying is that he's looking down on that, but that's how all of us start off. In a lot of ways, we stay there. When you're in school and you're reading these textbooks, we don't have time to. Somebody says, you could wrap your DNA around the earth this many times if you were to stretch it all out. Who's going to wrap their DNA around the earth to this moon to see how many times it actually goes around? You know what I'm saying? We're taking that on face value. We're taking on it seems like it makes sense. And so I just think that he's pretending as though he's making it seem as though we can walk around with certainty in everything. And that's not realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you talk about our spiritual beliefs, there's some things that we believe by faith in spiritual beliefs. It doesn't make us dumb. It doesn't make us short-sighted. It doesn't make us blind, dumb sheep, even though we are, sheep, and sheep can be dumb. That's true. But that's a part of being our humanity. We're frail beings. And we have to recognize that. And I think he talks about pride earlier, to think that God talked to me or whatever he was saying earlier. But the reality is it's to think that if he thinks he's not a blind, dumb sheep, then he's fooling himself. Because the reality is there's so much that we don't know. There's so much that we miss. I could be talking to y'all on the phone and be looking for my phone at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a human and I miss the easiest things sometimes.
Yeah.
Talk to my mom growing up. Boy, you walk around here like you know, my mom used to get on me about all kind of stuff that I would do, growing up. You know what I'm saying? Because I was a human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just don't like that he's framing and putting emphasis on a lot of these fundamental, well, I say negative connotation on some of these basic fundamental practices, right? Like you said, as a child, you had to just have the confidence / faith, and your parents was actually telling you, or telling you the things they was telling you had to trust that they met well whatever they was telling you. Same thing when you go to a job, when you get hired, you talk to your manager, you have to follow him, whatever knowledge he has that you don't have, and trust that he knows what he's doing when he's training you. Same thing with entrepreneurship. You just don't get out there and start working for yourself. People tend to have mentors and books they might read and past experiences, and this will help them pay the give them the guide for whatever they're trying to accomplish. So yeah, it's like basic fundamentals that we use in everyday life. It's the same fundamentals we use in certain spiritual practices or religions. It's the same thing. It's you have to be a sheep to a certain degree, or you have to be a soldier before you become a general. These are just basic principles. You get what I'm saying? So yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I agree with you all, but I want to speak for his point and the fact that I do believe that there are some brothers and sisters who are following some shepherds who are shielding them from the actual shepherd. And so because they are following this manipulating shepherd, they are unable to see what the actual shepherd wants to do for them. And so that I do believe that is a problem where some people are unable to reap the benefits of their belief because
Absolutely.
they are missing some of the key to not believe you can go directly to the Father because you have a mediator already is scary. Like that's Old Testament. Like this, you telling me you gotta be my mediator? Then that means there is no Christ. Or what is Christ for? So I do believe in what he is saying that there are some people who are so blind because of their shepherd that they cannot see the shepherd. And therefore they can be stuck in a rut or not having access again to certain deliverances or certain things that God has for us, that abundant life.
Definitely, man. Good stuff, man. I want to read the comments. Rokisha, witchcraft and manipulation, same. Yeah, according to the definition, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I guess we're gonna play this video. Whatever last point he make, we can end it off there. So let's go ahead.
A form of conditioning, a form of preemptive consent, something that has to do with a conceptual reinforcement, along as you were speaking so eloquently about the linearization of an idea and a behaviorism. So when we talk about we believe in Jesus Christ, pretty much most of us, if we were in a Christian house, came up with that belief, not knowing anything else. And if they did not have any exposure to any outside catechisms or any outside cultures, that's all their world would know. And so Christianity tends to set up its own antibiotics, its own defense mechanisms by telling you that if you were to stray outside of these constructs, these belief constructs, then you are imperiling yourself. So they kind of put danger signs where there never really was dangers. And so we are toward, like you say, sheep. And what is a sheep except the ass of the other sheep in front of it? And doesn't know anything beyond that. So I wanted to touch upon belief as being a kind of a conditioning process that the environment reinforces each and every day, through television, through your mama, through everything. Now, if you come into an understanding and overstanding based upon first-person experiential realities, we don't have a first-person experiential reality. That's spiritual. We only are dealing with a second person, a second-place referential reality, which is some guy called Jesus is supposed to be giving us some kind of vicarious atonement through us believing in him. So we in the African community or in this society alone are only conditioned through secondhand experiences based upon hearsay, what we hear teachers say, what we hear mama say. But when we leave all of that, which we are told not to, which we are made fearful of, we come into a first-hand experiential reality, which then now becomes something that you touch with your microbes, with your own atoms, with your own molecules. Wow. Christianity, religions, and so forth is always about imposing a second-hand experience on you. And you now, because there's nothing else to experience beyond that, you now accept it as a first-person reality.
Wow. They make the intercessor
this is
all important. I'm going to go to Bobby right after
this. This is the same reason Eve bit the apple. This is the first lie. This is the very first lie that he's retelling. And it's, God didn't say, God didn't say, is it wrong? You can eat from it. It is knowledge. Yes, it is knowledge. You're right. But God said, don't eat it.
Yeah, I want to cover some points that he made. You know, he mentioned belief being a preemptive thing. I mean, a lot of times you start off with belief because that's the first thing you start with. You arrive at knowing something a lot of times through a process of deduction and cumulative knowledge that's being gained to arrive at a certain knowledge that's that you're going after ultimately. And so it's going to be preemptive to some extent. He says that Christianity has its own antibiotic. That's true. All organizations, all systems, from the cells in our body to the solar system to whatever system is going to have ways of protecting itself and correcting itself. Because that's what systems do to remain systems. Every organization, whether it's a church, whether it's a corporation, they have to have some way of defending itself, keeping their culture and values the same. When I had my company, and we had a culture there. I wanted to protect that culture. So things that didn't fit the culture. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm telling jokes. I said the ushers.
Yeah, the ushers. Yeah. So we have to have those things in place to protect this culture. So nothing wrong with Christianity having its own antibiotic, because that's important to have your own antibiotic. And then the last part, to go along with the last part, what he said, I want everybody to keep in mind that when these gentlemen are speaking, Ethiopia has the oldest church that I'm aware of, which is in Africa. So a lot of times they make it seem like Christianity is this otherworldly religion that landed on the planet, and Africa is the pillar of real spirituality, and so they're at odds. Christianity, Judaism comes right from the same place, and there are many Africans who are Christians historically, going back thousands of years. So there's no reason to think that these two need to be at odds with one another, being African, being black, and being Christian, because that's not the case. The oldest Christians in the world are black, as far as we know. So I didn't keep that in mind. Don't let the people use certain words to mislead you into thinking that to be black is, to be Christian is to be against your ancestors or to be against the history of your people. It's not true.
So,
shout out to the Enoch.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it, Darius. I don't think we're playing any more of the video, but
yes, sir.
We can just do closing comments.
All right. Yeah, like I said, well, go ahead. You can start off with the count clock.
Okay. So everybody, audience, we had some technical difficulties today, so it pushed us out probably about 45 minutes or so. Thanks, those of you who are still on and still commented and kept the participation up. It gets us excited when we see the questions and the participation. It gets us more excited that we know we're on the right path and the people really are being benefited and edified by what we're talking about. I want to thank King David for coming on. He brought up a lot of great points and really helped the show. So I appreciate that. And Enos, again, thanks for working through those technical difficulties to get the show back up and running. So I just want to say in closing, it's the Vulcan. The show's meant to help y'all to think critically so y'all can have the tools to research and to learn, not just the information. Anybody can fact check on Google information and see if it's right or wrong in today's time period. But you can't Google or fact check an argument. Somebody's premises that they connect to form a conclusion. You know, those are things you can't type that in Google. You have to be able to identify those things by knowing what logic is, knowing what reason is, knowing what a bad argument is, knowing what a good argument is. And that's what the purpose of this show is. That's a little bit more of a difficult thing to discern. And we're giving you the tools, not to think for you, but to think with you. So, Vulcan out.
All right, what's up, David?
Hey, thank y'all for inviting me. Really enjoyed it. This conversation is much needed. Thank y'all for the participants. We really appreciate y'all. It kept everything going, and great show, you all. Keep it going because this is what the people need.
Definitely. Again, my name is Enos, for those that don't know. And Vulcan touched on this earlier. The purpose of the show to I guess that's what we're doing, trying to cultivate critical thinking. You know, that's what we're trying to do out here. This is what I call self-empowerment. Start with the mind, you know, how to decipher and organize your thoughts, right? You know, so remember, remember this. Don't what we're doing. Like I said earlier, it looks like we're nitpicking. It's a misunderstanding what critical thinking is. Like it comes off, or it might look like we're just doubting everything or criticizing everything. But this is very much needed. So that's what I want to encourage us to continue doing these kind of platforms, or creating these kind of platforms, and actually using these tools. So yeah, that's all I got to say. This is again Enos. Tune in next time. Subscribe, like the channel. Again, shows are Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. You are welcome to join us where we are testing new ideas. We are open to or highly encourage diversity of thought, and we have a high tolerance for dissenting views. Again, Enos, Vulcan, again, thank us for joining us, David. King David. And we'll see y'all next time.